A full moon hung heavy in the sky, its silver light casting eerie shadows upon the snow-covered forest. The air was sharp, thick with the scent of pine and the distant howl of unseen creatures. Selene's breath rose in frantic clouds as she stumbled forward, her bare feet sinking into the frostbitten ground. Her thin nightgown, once white, now clung to her body in tattered shreds, torn by the gnarled branches that reached for her like skeletal fingers. Behind her, the heavy crunch of boots breaking through ice-packed snow sent terror coursing through her veins. She dared not turn around. She already knew who followed. The two guards, clad in Ravenglen's dark blue and silver colors, moved with the quiet efficiency of men long accustomed to carrying out their lady's cruel commands. Their hands bore no weapons. They had no need for them. The wolves would do the killing for them. "Move faster, girl," one of the guard barked, his voice thick with contempt. "Or would you rather we drag you the rest of the way?" Selene bit her lip to hold back a retort. There was no use in speaking. No plea would sway them. No mercy lived in the heart of those who served Lady Ivora, her stepmother, the woman who had stolen her father's love, his mind, and now his legacy. Selene should have seen it coming. Ivora had whispered poison into his ear for years, weaving lies and deceit like an artisan. When Selene's father had fallen ill, his once strong will had crumbled beneath Ivora's influence. And when he finally died, the last shred of Selene's protection vanished with him. Now, she was a burden, a threat to Ivora's own daughter, who would soon claim the title of Lady of Ravenglen. There was only one way to be rid of an unwanted heir: death. But not at a blade's edge. That would be too swift, too clean. No, Ivora had chosen a different fate for her, a crueler one. The wolves would feast the night. The guards came to a stop just before the heart of the forest, where the trees grew taller and their branches intertwined, forming an impenetrable canopy. The wind howled through the trees, a lonely, haunting sound that sent shivers down Selene's spine. "This is far enough," the taller of the two men said. He turned to Selene, his expression blank. "Run." She didn't move. For a moment, she thought she hadn't heard him correctly. "I said run," when she still didn't respond. The other guard took a step forward, his gloved hand lashing out to shove her forward. She fell to her knees in the snow, the cold biting into her skin like the jaws of a beast. Laughter rumbled from behind her. "Go on, girl," the first guard sneered. "Give us a good chase. Maybe if you're quick enough, you'll make it to morning." Selene's heart pounded. Her body screamed for her to flee, but fear had turned her limbs to stone. Then a howl split the air. "Lo, hungry!" The guard stiffened. One of them reached for his sword, but the other stilled him with a glance. "No need," he murmured. "They smell her already." Selene turned her head toward the darkness of the trees, her breath hitching in her throat. Golden eyes flickered in the shadows, appearing one by one like dying embers in the night. Silent, watching, waiting. A hand grabbed her shoulder and wrenched her to her feet. "Run, little lady." The guard's voice was almost amused. "Run while you still can." Then they let her go, and the wolves came. The trees swallowed her whole. Branches lashed against her arms and legs, tearing fresh gashes into her skin as she ran. The cold air burned in her lungs, but Selene did not stop. She could hear them behind her, the rustling of leaves, the quiet crunch of paws against the snow. The wolves were hunting. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Every instinct screamed for her to run faster, to find some escape. But the darkness was thick, the trees an endless labyrinth of shifting shadows. The moonlight barely cut through the dense canopy, leaving only the faintest glimmer to guide her. A growl rumbled through the night, closer this time. Selene stumbled over a hidden root, her body slamming into the frozen earth. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, and she gasped, her fingers clawing at the snow as she struggled to rise. But it was too late. The wolves surrounded her. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness, golden and unblinking. They did not lunge. They did not snarl or snap their jaws. They only watched. Selene's breath hitched. This was wrong. Wolves were meant to be vicious, mindless beasts, especially in the face of easy prey. Yet these creatures stood still, waiting for something, expecting something. The largest of them stepped forward. His silver gray fur shone like frost beneath the moonlight, and his gaze held something more than hunger, intelligence, recognition. Selene pressed herself against the cold ground, her entire body trembling. She was certain this would be her end. Then the great wolf lowered his head and nudged her arm. She flinched, expecting sharp fangs, but none came. The wolf let out a low chuff, his breath warm against her skin. Another wolf padded closer, then another, their bodies circling her like a protective wall. Selene's chest tightened. This was impossible. Wolves did not show mercy. But these creatures, these magnificent beasts, were not here to kill her. They were welcoming her. A strange warmth spread through her veins, chasing away the cold. It was as if something deep within her had awakened, something ancient and forgotten. The realization sent a shiver through her body, but not from fear. She belonged here. The great wolf tilted his head, waiting. Slowly, hesitantly, Selene lifted a trembling hand and placed it against his fur. It was thick, warm, alive. A connection sparked between them. Something she could not explain but felt in her very soul. The pack had chosen her. And Selene, the girl meant to die in the snow, had just been reborn. The first rays of dawn crept through the trees, casting golden slivers across the snow-dusted ground. Selene lay still, her fingers entwined in the thick fur of the great wolf beside her. The warmth of the pack surrounded her, their breaths steady and calm as the forest stirred to life. She had not slept. Not truly. Her mind had been a whirlwind of thoughts, memories, and emotions she barely understood. The wolves had not harmed her. Instead, they had stayed close, their silent presence a comfort she never expected to find in the heart of the wilderness. Selene sat up slowly, careful not to startle the beasts. They watched her, unreadable but patient. The great silver wolf, undoubtedly the alpha, stood and stretched before stepping toward her. His golden eyes met hers, and in that moment, she felt it again, that inexplicable connection, a thread of something ancient and powerful linking them together. A whisper of wind danced through the trees, rustling the frost-laden branches. Selene inhaled deeply, and for the first time, she felt it. The forest itself, the pulse of the land beneath her, the rhythm of life coursing through the veins of the wild. It was as if the very earth spoke to her, calling her to listen. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the steady beat of her own heart. Something was different. The fear that had gripped her for so long was gone, replaced by a strange certainty. She had not been abandoned to die. She had been chosen to rise. The alpha let out a soft chuff, breaking the silence. Selene met his gaze once more, and without thinking, she reached out. Her fingers brushed against his muzzle, and a surge of warmth spread through her. Images flickered in her mind, memories that were not her own. Hunts beneath the moon, the whisper of the wind through the treetops, the unbreakable bond of the pack. She gasped, withdrawing her hand. The wolf only watched. Selene pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. The wolves moved with her, their movements fluid and unthreatening. She looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers. The energy within her was new, but undeniable. She turned back to the pack, her pulse steady, her decision made. She would not return to Ravenglen. She was no longer the girl cast into the wild to perish. She was something more. Selene, daughter of the wild, had awakened. The scent of fresh earth and pine filled the crisp morning air as Selene followed the pack deeper into the forest. The wolves moved with silent grace, their powerful bodies weaving through the underbrush as if the very land bowed to them. Selene's steps were slower, hesitant at first, but with each passing moment, she found herself matching their rhythm. It felt natural. The great silver wolf, her guardian, her guide, walked beside her, his golden eyes flicking toward her now and then, as if assessing her readiness. Selene did not need to speak to understand. She felt the weight of expectation in his gaze. She was being tested. Accepted, yes, but not yet proven. The deeper they traveled, the more the forest changed. The trees stood taller, ancient and wise, their gnarled roots twisting over land like veins beneath the skin. A sense of something sacred hung in the air, something beyond mere wilderness. Selene's heartbeat quickened. This was no ordinary path. The wolves were leading her somewhere important. They reached a clearing bathed in golden light. In its center stood a towering stone, weathered with age, its surface carved with symbols that pulsed faintly with a silver glow. The moment her eyes fell upon it, a shiver ran down her spine. She recognized nothing of the language, and yet she understood. It was a place of power, a relic of something ancient, something waiting. The alpha let out a low, rumbling growl and stepped forward. The rest of the pack hung back, watching, waiting. Selene swallowed hard and followed. As she neared the stone, warmth bloomed beneath her skin, radiating outward like an ember stirred to life. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the glowing etchings. The air around her crackled, a soft hum filling her ears. And then, the moment her fingertips brushed the stone, a surge of energy shot through her, powerful and untamed. She gasped, her vision darkening as a flood of images poured into her mind. Wolves running beneath twin moons, a woman cloaked in silver standing at the edge of a cliff, a great beast with burning red eyes watching from the shadows. A voice, distant yet familiar, echoed in her thoughts. You are the bridge between worlds, the lost daughter of the wild. Rise. Selene's breath came in sharp gasps as she staggered back, the vision fading as quickly as it came. Her knees nearly buckled, but the silver wolf pressed against her side, steadying her. She knew now, this was not a mere acceptance into the pack. This was a calling. Selene clenched her fists, the warmth in her veins no longer foreign, no longer feared. She was meant for this. She belonged here. The girl who had been cast away had found her path, and she would walk it with the wolves.